Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about that 1959 Alfred Hitchcock film, North by Northwest, and its brand new Warner Brothers 4K Blu-ray that just came out. Before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, guys, I always like to give a quick film review, and today is no different. So if you don't want to know anything about the film North by Northwest, please make sure you guys skip ahead to that 4K Blu-ray review right now. So back in 1959, Alfred Hitchcock released North by Northwest that stars Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint. And this came out at a time when Alfred Hitchcock was just firing on all cylinders. It could be argued that his three best films came out 3 years in a row. Vertigo in 1958, North by Northwest in 1959, and then Psycho in 1960. I know that Vertigo is my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film. Rope is probably my second favorite, but then right behind that is probably North by Northwest or maybe Psycho. It's really hard to pick a favorite Alfred Hitchcock film. The guy just put out so many great films in such a short period of time. I mean, you know, we look at guys like Stanley Kubrick and Quentin Tarantino, who in this entire amount of time have only put out like 10 films each. Like Quentin Tarantino put his first film out in 1992, and we've only gotten 9 movies in over 30 years, which is incredible, whereas you got guys like Alfred Hitchcock just banging out a new film each and every single year, and good films at that. And he was also working with a great team of people. Bernard Herrmann does the score again on this movie, a fantastic score. Sid Bass does the opening credits, which I never really get to nerd out over opening credits, but when we're talking Alfred Hitchcock, between this and Vertigo, he has some of the greatest opening credit scenes in film history. Just, I know it's like kind of a boring thing. People don't really like to see the names pop up on the screen and don't really care about that artwork, but you know, I like those little attention to details. And we don't really get that too often anymore, but this used to be an art form back in the day. That's something that would carry over to the James Bond franchise, which is very much known for those incredible opening title sequences, you know, usually combining it with the brand new James Bond movie theme. And you know, why do I bring up James Bond? Well, North by Northwest is considered by a lot of people to be the first James Bond film. And when you watch the movie, it does feel like a 1960s era Sean Connery James Bond film. But, you know, this is a very different movie from a James Bond film. If you just look at it from the sense like, hey, they're traveling the country of the United States. We're in a bunch of different, beautiful looking locations. You know, there is some spy espionage going on. Cary Grant, quite the ladies' man. But he fell into the situation very different than James Bond did. James Bond is a real spy. Cary Grant, not a spy. This whole movie is about mistaken identity. You know, he's an ad man in the 1950s, 1960s. That was a huge job to get. Look at the show Mad Men, you know. Hey, those were great guys. You know, living it up in the big city, real cosmopolitan, you know, smoking cigarettes. You know, they had the life back then. And Cary Grant seems like he has the life. But one day, a couple of guys say, hey, get in this car right now. And he's all confused about it. And, you know, when you watch this movie for the first time, if you don't know what movie you're watching, you're like, what the hell's going on? They kidnap him, they force him to get drunk, and then they're going to make it look like an accident, like a drunk driving accident, and have him drive off the cliff. Luckily for us, Cary Grant, very good drunk driver. He survives it. Still gets arrested, though, because, yeah, he's driving drunk, which was something that I just found out was, I didn't know you could get DUIs in the 1950s. That was a surprise to me. Something I found out from this movie. The first time I ever saw this movie, I was like, wow, I didn't know they gave DUIs out at that time. And if you didn't give a blood test, you sacrificed your license. That law is still intact today. So I guess some things never change. So I always thought that was kind of funny. I mean, Cary Grant does a great job acting drunk in that scene. But now he's got to convince everybody that, yeah, I'm not this guy. I don't know what's going on. Like, I got kidnapped. All this stuff also, when they're talking about early in the film, Glen Cove, New York, that's on Long Island. So I always think that's also really funny. The Nassau County detectives show up. You know, very different time for Long Island. I think it's funny. We start this movie in New York, and then, of course, we're going to end up in South Dakota at Mount Rushmore, which was only completed in 1941. And it's just the perfect movie setting. It makes a lot of sense to end our movie there. And this movie is filled with some of the most iconic shots in film history. I mean, right on the cover of the 4K Blu-ray is that iconic shot with the crop dusting plane. And that whole scene is just filled with tension. At first, you think it's the guy getting on the bus, and then we see the plane coming in the background, and we're like, is that plane going to come for him? And then, of course, how it ends with it crashing into the side of the truck. The tension that this movie builds, and it's also a lot of fun. It's very funny. I mean, it's combining a bunch of different elements, and if you listen to Alfred Hitchcock talk about this movie, after doing Vertigo, which is a very serious thriller movie, he wanted to do something a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun. That's why there's a lot more comedy elements in it, why you're bringing Cary Grant, who's never afraid to do the comedy bits, you know, kind of make fun of himself a little bit. That's what you bring Cary Grant in for, because, again, he's kind of riding along throughout this entire movie. It's not until the very end where he's finally on board with what's going on. I mean, he felt like throughout this entire film, like, his life is ruined. Like, they're trying to frame you for something that I didn't do. And then other elements that they take from the James Bond film in this movie, as we do get close to the end of it, is that microfilm is the MacGuffin. That's used in one of the early James Bond films, where a microfilm is used as the MacGuffin, where they're trying to smuggle that around. Also, the last transition at the very end of the movie is very something similar that you've seen in other James Bond films. And also Brian De Palma, who loves to rip off Alfred Hitchcock, definitely took that transition at the very, very end as well. Especially if you've seen Body Double, that's a very similar transition in that movie. And then, of course, the very end with the train going into the tunnel, making it look like it's a very big sexual innuendo. This movie came out in the 1950s. There was a code in place. We have to give it the happy ending. You can't really have sex on screen, but man, they were hinting at it a lot in this movie. This movie is extremely horny. Even Marie Saint half the time is just throwing herself at Cary Grant. He's a ladies' man. I guess it makes sense. He's an attractive guy for the time, but it's just so funny because, Alfred Hitchcock, me and David, aka Shamrock Balls, have talked about this here on the channel, where if Alfred Hitchcock could have made movies like in the 80s, like Brian De Palma got to, his movies would have definitely had a lot more nudity and a lot more sex scenes in there, but he just had to work with what he got back then, so there's just so many sexual innuendos in North by Northwest. And I mean, it's one of the classic films for a reason. It's considered one of the greatest films ever made, and for a good reason. I still can't believe this movie came out in the 1950s. You can see the inspiration on so many other movies out there, and for a movie that cost about, I think, $5 million to make and only made $10 million at the box office, listening to those numbers in 2024 might scare you, but it was still a pretty big hit. It's still very popular, and it's a movie, if by chance, you don't like those classic films, this is one of those classic films I can highly, highly, highly recommend. It's a good gateway into Alfred Hitchcock's filmography, and you know what? Maybe this new 4K Blu-ray from Warner Bros. Is the perfect way to check this film out. Let's talk about it. And here it is, North by Northwest by Warner Bros. On 4K Blu-ray, which this came out the same week as Blazing Saddles and The Terminator on 4K Blu-ray, and there's a lot of similarities between all three of those. All three of them got a standard edition release, and they also got 4K Steelbook releases, but that's not where the similarities end. First, we'll just look at this cool packaging, because I actually like the slipcover more than the Steelbook. This is one of the rare times where I thought the slipcover was actually beautiful looking. I really did like what they did with the artwork here. So, you get the same artwork underneath, but if you got the Steelbook, that's cool too. Same artwork underneath. You come inside, like a lot of Warner Brothers releases nowadays, it's only a one disc set, one 4K Blu-ray disc. But you know what? They did pack everything you could ever imagine on that 4K Blu-ray disc, so I can't really complain too much about that. I just know that there's people out there who want to buy the 4K Blu-ray with the Blu-ray disc in there, with the brand new scan on there. And unfortunately, you can't do that. You can only get this on 4K Blu-ray. Now, I don't know if my UK friends get the Blu-ray packed in there, because sometimes they get something a little bit different. Like, they got a really nice collector's edition, I believe, for this, and I know they did for Blazing Saddles. Here in the United States, we just got this and the Steelbook, but sometimes they get the Blu-ray packed in there, whereas we don't. And Warner Brothers especially, that's happened many times in the past. So I'm not entirely sure if they get the pack-in Blu-ray, but all of your extras are on this 4K Blu-ray disc, and I love the extras. The extras are actually fantastic. You get a commentary track, of course, but you also get a great Alfred Hitchcock documentary that's about 54 minutes long on here. You get one looking back on the film itself. It's about 25 minutes long, something, and then another one looking at, just the technical aspects of this movie, the cinematography, all of that stuff. That's another great featurette on here. So I really did appreciate the extras. It's not like a shit ton on here, but for what we got, these are some of my favorite extras. So I was just very, very happy. Given none of them are new, it's the same thing as we talked about with the Terminator on 4K Blu-ray. All archival extras, but still, they're very good archival extras, so I was really, really happy that we got that. Now, what about the audio? So, very similar to the Terminator, actually. I've never owned North by Northwest on physical media in my life. This is the first time I've ever owned it, so I had to do a little bit of research. And this is where it's very similar to the Terminator, and apparently Blazing Saddles is... This is also the return of the original audio for it. The original theatrical audio returns to this, so you can listen to this with the original audio, very similar to something you could do on Blazing Saddles, and I love doing this on the Terminator. The only thing is I had much more of a connection to the Terminator than I do by Northwest, but maybe some film historians out there want to watch this in its original audio track. That's pretty cool, so that's included on here. But if you want to check it out with this brand new Dolby Atmos track, that's actually a really good Dolby Atmos track. And to bring a Dolby Atmos track to a late 1950s film, Again, it's fantastic. So well done. This is a very old movie. No pops, no clicks, no nothing. Actually makes really good use of your channels. Really surprised the hell out of me for a Dolby Atmos track like this. Warner Bros. Actually really did put the work in on this, and I can't say that they did a bad job on the audio. You know, the audio itself, maybe not 10 out of 10 like the Terminator I said was, but still, I love them giving us those 2 audio tracks, giving us options, which apparently wasn't even on the previous Blu-ray. I don't know when the last time this original audio was out there, but it's been a long time, so I'm sure fans of this movie are going to be really happy you get that, and you get a brand new Dolby Atmos track. Literally the best of both worlds. Now, what about those visuals? No Dolby Vision, but you do get HDR10, and to me, this 4K Blu-ray looked stunning. This is the best that I have ever seen North by Northwest look, and it isn't even close. The HDR10 does a great job as well, making sure things don't get too out of hand while still hitting those deep blacks, and it still looks like a film that came out in the late 1950s. That's something we have to always worry about, is we don't want a movie like this to look too modern. You still want it to look like it came out at that time, and this movie perfectly resonates with that. It's very similar to the 4K Blu-rays that they did last year from Warner Brothers, like Cool Hand Luke and Rebel Without a Cause. You know, movies that came out around the similar time using similar shooting techniques, similar lighting. If you like those 4K Blu-rays, you'll definitely like North by Northwest, even though I do feel like this one's a little bit more subtle. You know, nothing gets over-exaggerated. Like, I heard people arguing about Cool Hand Luke. Me personally, I loved what they did with Cool Hand Luke, but I could see that they kind of, you know, turned back a little bit of that Warner Brothers stuff and made sure it still felt like North by Northwest. And it's a beautiful looking 4K Blu-ray. I mean, this really is one of the better Warner Brothers releases, even comparable to the Terminator. I love what they gave us on here. Yes, I would have liked that extra Blu-ray disc. You know, maybe a little bit more extras, but this isn't something I have like a connection to like the Terminator, so the extras didn't really bother me as much. I really enjoyed them, actually. Like the packaging on both the Steelbook and on the Standard Edition. The Standard Edition I really actually thought was the slipcover was actually beautiful. I really did enjoy that. And the audio tracks are great. So really, this is a fantastic release from Warner Brothers. And if you're a fan of North by Northwest and Alfred Hitchcock, this is definitely one that deserves to be in your collection. And I don't think it's priced too bad. You can buy this on Groove, I think, for $30 for the Steelbook and $25 for this 4K Blu-ray. Yeah, I get it. You're only getting one disc, but you get a lot on that disc. And I think you're going to be really happy with it. And what would I give this 4K Blu-ray on a score of 1 to 10? I would give North by Northwest, just like the Terminator, a really solid 8.5 out of 10. Definitely Warner Brothers did a good job on this one. And guys, it's also Tuesday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. So I'm going to kick it over to my future self right now. That is correct, Past John. It's Tuesday, guys. That means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video that we do on Friday, I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you gotta do is answer one in the comment section below. As long as you did that, you come back to this video right here where I put your name on a magic wheel, spun that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it landed on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. So let's see who our 2 lucky winners are. All right, congratulations to Thomas Anderson and the Existing 4 podcast. And Shark Boy, if you want to challenge that, it was right on the line. You can get a digital code as well. But if you didn't win this week, guys, don't worry about it. We do this every single week, so make sure you come back to this Friday's video to see how to enter next week's digital code giveaway. And thank you guys all so much. Guys, we also have channel memberships here on the channel, and every single month we like to do a giveaway for our channel members, whether it be under the Friends of the Channel tier, producers like John Doe Juggalo and Jason Martin, or directors like Frank from Frank's Media Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato. And what are we giving away this month? It always makes me feel like a game show host, but I decided to throw in the Ghost 4K Blu-ray. I'm just going to hold on to the Ghost Blu-ray, so the Ghost 4K Blu-ray is up for grabs. The original Ouija film, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, The Core, Thor Love and Thunder, Tuani 12. And last but not least, one of the best films of the 1980s, Lost Boys on 4K Blu-ray. And as long as you're a channel member, next week, along with our digital code giveaway, I will put your name on a magic wheel. I'll spin that wheel one time, and the name it lands on, they have their choice of those 4K Blu-rays. But guys, if you got no money to throw away, don't worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.